He didn't notice which sister stepped aside until morning. And by the time Duke Hartley Greaves realized the woman whose quiet presence had steadied him through an entire season had slipped away into the rain-soaked darkness. Hours before his carriage reached her family's crumbling estate, she had already made a decision that would unravel everything he thought he understood about duty, desire, and the difference between what people choose and what they actually want. 3 months earlier, Lydia Ashton had arrived at the capital with two certainties. She would secure her younger sister's future, and she would remain invisible while doing so. Those were not hopes. They were necessities. The Ashton name still carried weight in certain circles, though the estate did not. Their father had died owing more than he owned, and their mother followed shortly after, leaving Lydia at 26 and her sister Emmeline at 19 with a house mortgage beyond repair and exactly 1 season's worth of borrowed gowns. Emmeline was everything society rewarded: golden-haired, charming, quick to laugh, radiant in candlelight. Lydia was none of those things. She was competent, observant, fluent in 4 languages no one asked her to speak, and entirely aware that her role was not to shine, but to ensure Emmeline did. It worked precisely as planned. Within 2 weeks, Emmeline had drawn attention from a dozen eligible men. Within 4, the Duke of Greaves himself had begun seeking her company at every gathering. And Lydia, standing always 3 steps behind, watched her sister become exactly what she was meant to be: wanted. Duke Hartley Greaves was 31, controlled in the way men become when they inherit too much too young, and possessed of a reputation for choosing with his mind rather than his heart. He attended every social obligation, danced the required dances, and spoke with practiced politeness that revealed nothing. People respected him. Few claimed to know him. But Lydia noticed things others missed. The way his jaw tightened when conversations turned performative. The brief, unguarded relief in his expression whenever he stepped out of crowded ballrooms into quieter corridors. The fact that he listened more carefully to servants than to aristocrats. She noticed, too, the exact moment he decided to marry Emmeline. It happened during a garden party in late spring. Emmeline had laughed at something another gentleman said, bright and effortless, and the Duke's gaze had settled on her with a kind of resigned certainty. Not joy, not longing, just decision. Lydia felt nothing at the sight, or told herself she felt nothing, because what she felt didn't matter. What did matter was that Emmeline began changing after that. Slowly at first. She smiled more carefully, laughed less freely, started asking Lydia which gown made her seem more dignified, which opinions she should voice, which parts of herself she should soften. And every time, Lydia answered with the truth that would help her sister secure the future she deserved. Even as something in Emmeline's brightness began to dim, the Duke courted her properly. Formal visits, supervised walks, conversations that never strayed beyond acceptable topics. And through it all, Lydia remained present but unnoticed, translating when foreign dignitaries visited, managing correspondence Emmeline found tedious, smoothing over small missteps before anyone else saw them. Then came the night of the final ball before the Duke's expected proposal. The entire season had built toward this. Emmeline wore pale gold. Lydia wore gray. They arrived together, and within minutes, the Duke appeared at Emmeline's side, as everyone anticipated. But what no one anticipated, least of all Lydia herself, was that halfway through the evening, Emmeline would panic. It happened in a withdrawing room where Lydia found her sister trembling, gasping for air that wouldn't come. "I can't," Emmeline whispered. "Lydia, I can't do this." "Breathe," Lydia said quietly, kneeling beside her. Slowly. "He doesn't love me. I don't love him. I'm pretending every single moment, and I don't know how to stop." Lydia's chest tightened, but her voice remained steady. "You don't have to love him. You just have to marry him. The rest will come." "No, it won't." Emmeline grabbed her hands desperately. "It won't, and you know it won't, and I'll spend my entire life pretending to be someone I'm not because we needed his money. We need more than money. We need security. A future. You need those things," Emmeline said, tears streaming now. "I need to breathe." The words hung between them, and Lydia realized with sinking certainty that her sister was right. Somewhere in all the strategy and planning, she'd forgotten that Emmeline was 19 and terrified and being pressed into a life she'd never wanted. "Then don't do it," Lydia whispered. Emmeline stared at her. "What? If you truly can't bear it, don't. We'll find another way." There is no other way. There's always another way. It just might not be easy. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Emmeline asked the question that changed everything. What if he asked you instead? Lydia's breath caught. He won't. But if he did, it doesn't matter. He's chosen you. Because you made him choose me. You wrote half my letters. You told me what to say. You made me into someone he'd want. Emmeline's voice cracked. But you're the one he actually talks to when he thinks no one's watching. And that was when Lydia understood what her sister had seen, what she herself had refused to acknowledge. The Duke's attention had never quite landed where it should. Lydia returned to the ballroom alone. Emmeline needed time, needed air, needed space away from the weight of expectation pressing down on her from every direction. And Lydia needed to think, though thinking had become suddenly, dangerously difficult because her sister's words had opened something she'd kept carefully locked away for months. The Duke found her near the terrace doors. Not Emmeline. Her. Miss Ashton, he said quietly. Is your sister well? She needed a moment. The heat. He studied her with that same careful attention she'd learned to recognize. And you? Do you need a moment as well? I'm fine. You always are. There was something in his tone she couldn't quite name. Not accusation. Almost observation. I've noticed that about you. Her pulse quickened traitorously. I'm not the one you should be noticing. No, he agreed. I shouldn't. But he didn't move away. Silence settled between them, and Lydia became acutely aware that they were standing closer than propriety allowed, that his attention was fixed entirely on her in a way it never had been before, that something unspoken was building in the space between them. Dance with me, he said. Your Grace, I one dance. While we wait for your sister to return. It wasn't a request, not quite, and refusing would draw more attention than accepting. So Lydia allowed him to lead her onto the floor, allowed his hand to settle at her waist, allowed herself one single moment of forgetting why this was dangerous. They moved in silence at first. Then he spoke, voice low enough that only she could hear. Do you know what I've noticed most this season? I couldn't possibly guess. That every intelligent conversation I've had has been with you. Every moment I've felt seen rather than assessed has been in your presence. Every time something worthwhile has been said, you've either said it or translated it or ensured it was heard. Lydia's chest constricted. You're marrying my sister. Am I? The question landed like a stone in still water. She looked up at him sharply, and what she saw in his expression made her breath catch because it wasn't duty or resignation or careful control. It was want, raw and undisguised. You chose her, Lydia whispered. I chose what I thought I was supposed to choose. What everyone expected me to choose. I didn't realize until far too late that I'd been choosing raw. Stop. The word came out harder than intended. You can't say these things. Why not? Because she's 19 and kind and terrified, and she's trying desperately to be what you need, and I won't let you destroy her because you've suddenly decided. Her voice broke. You don't get to change your mind now. His hand tightened slightly at her waist. What if it wasn't sudden? What if I'd been lying to myself for months? The music swelled around them, and Lydia felt the world tilting dangerously. It doesn't matter what you've been doing. It matters what you've already done. You courted her. You chose her. She's built her entire future around the belief that you want her. But she doesn't want me, does she? The accuracy of the observation stunned her into momentary silence. I thought not, he continued quietly. I've watched her become smaller every week. More careful. Less herself. And I told myself it was nerves, but it's not. It's misery. Then court her differently. Give her time. Let her, Lydia. He'd never used her first name before. The intimacy of it stopped her completely. Look at me and tell me I'm raw. Tell me you feel nothing when we speak. Tell me these months have meant nothing to you. She couldn't. The truth was too close to the surface, too dangerous to voice. I can't marry her, he said. Not feeling this way. Not knowing she deserves someone who loves her the way she needs to be loved. And not when the woman I actually want is standing in front of me pretending she doesn't want me back. You're mistaken. Am I? Yes. The lie tasted bitter. You're confusing familiarity with feeling. I've been useful to you. That's all. Something flickered in his expression. Hurt, maybe, or disappointment. I don't believe you. Believe what you like. It changes nothing. The music ended. Lydia stepped back immediately, curtsying with perfect formality, rebuilding the distance between them with practiced precision. I'll find Emmeline. You should prepare yourself. I'm certain she'll want to speak with you before the evening ends." She walked away before he could respond, before the careful control she'd maintained could crack completely. Found Emmeline still in the withdrawing room, calmer now, but no less certain. "I can't marry him," her sister said simply. "I know what it costs us, but I can't." Lydia pulled her close. "Then you won't. What will we do?" "I'll think of something. I always do." They left within the hour, quietly, without farewells. Let the Duke wonder. Let society talk. Lydia would handle the consequences tomorrow. But when their hired carriage pulled away from the blazing lights of the ball, when the city began to fade behind them into darkness, Lydia allowed herself one moment of weakness. She pressed her forehead against the cold window glass and let herself imagine, just briefly, what it might have felt like if the Duke's confession had come under different circumstances. If duty hadn't stood between them. If her sister's heart hadn't been at stake. Then she locked the thought away and began planning their survival, because that was what she did. What she'd always done. The fantasy ended there. Except hours later, as dawn broke cold and gray over their crumbling estate, she heard hoofbeats approaching through the rain. Lydia was already dressed when the knock came. She'd spent the night cataloging assets they didn't have, drafting letters to relatives who'd stopped answering years ago, calculating exactly how long they could survive before the house was seized. Sleep had been impossible. Planning, at least, gave her something to control. Emmeline was still asleep upstairs. Let her rest while she could. The knock came again, sharper. Lydia opened the door herself. They'd dismissed the last servant months ago, and froze. Duke Hartley Greaves stood on her doorstep, soaked through from riding through the rain, looking nothing like the composed aristocrat who'd commanded every ballroom that season. He looked undone. "You left," he said. The ball ended. Without a word. Without. He stopped, seeming to realize how he sounded. "May I come in?" Lydia hesitated, then stepped aside. He entered, water pooling on floors that hadn't been properly maintained in years. The morning light was cruel to the estate's decay. Peeling paint, faded wallpaper, empty spaces where furniture had been sold. He noticed. Of course he noticed. "How long have you been living like this?" "That's not your concern. Everything about you has become my concern." He turned to face her fully. "I went to your rooms at the inn after the ball. You'd already left. I've been riding since midnight." "Why?" "Because I made a mistake. Because I chose wrongly. Because I let duty and expectation convince me to pursue someone I admired rather than someone I—" He stopped. "I need to know if I was wrong earlier. If what you said was true." Lydia's hands clenched at her sides. "It doesn't matter. It's the only thing that matters." "No. What matters is that my sister is upstairs trying to breathe properly for the first time in months, because she's not going to marry you. What matters is that I have approximately 6 weeks before we lose this house entirely. What matters is survival, Your Grace. Not feelings. Let me help." "No." "Lydia," I said no. Her voice cracked despite her best effort. "I won't let you solve our problems with money or pity or misplaced guilt because you feel badly about choosing the wrong sister. We'll manage on our own. This isn't pity. And I didn't choose the wrong sister by mistake. I chose her because I was a coward." The confession hung between them, raw and honest. "I saw you the first day you arrived," he continued quietly. "You were translating for that French ambassador who kept insulting the Lord Chancellor. And you did it so smoothly, he never realized you'd changed his words to prevent an incident. You were brilliant. And I noticed. And then I spent 3 months convincing myself I noticed wrong. That I should want what everyone expected me to want. Someone young, charming, easy to present to society. I pursued Emmeline because she was safe. Because wanting you felt dangerous." "It is dangerous," Lydia whispered. "For both of us." "I don't care. You should. You're a duke. I'm a woman with nothing. Not even a house that's truly mine. What exactly do you imagine happens if you choose me? Society will call you foolish at best. They'll call me calculating. They'll say I manipulated you, stole you from my own sister. Let them say it. Easy words when you're not the one who'll be destroyed by them." He stepped closer. "Then tell me you feel nothing, and I'll leave. Tell me these months meant nothing. Tell me every conversation we shared was just duty. Tell me that what I feel is one-sided. And I swear I'll walk away and never trouble you again." Lydia's throat tightened. "I can't. Can't lie? Or can't tell me you feel nothing?" "Both." The admission tore free before she could stop it. "Both. And it doesn't matter because I won't destroy my sister's reputation, or let you sacrifice your standing or build a future on guilt, and he kissed her. Gentle but certain, one hand cupping her face while rain hammered against the windows and the broken house settled around them. And Lydia, who'd spent months being careful, being invisible, being everything except herself, finally stopped pretending. When they broke apart, she was shaking. This is impossible. Most worthwhile things are. I'm serious. The scandal alone will fade. It always does. Not for women like me. Then I'll make certain you're protected. Always. He brushed a strand of hair from her face with devastating tenderness. Marry me. Not because of duty or houses or money. Marry me because when I imagine the rest of my life, every version that matters has you in it. You barely know me. I know you speak 4 languages. I know you've been translating correspondence for half the diplomatic corps without credit. I know you've been managing your family's collapse with more grace than most men show managing wealth. I know that every interesting thought I've had this season has been because you said something that made me think differently. His voice softened. And I know that I'd rather be poor with you than comfortable with anyone else. Upstairs, a door opened. Emmeline appeared at the top of the stairs, wrapped in a dressing gown, eyes wide. Lydia? Is that the Duke? Lydia confirmed, not looking away from him. He's just leaving. Actually, Hartley said, I'm proposing. Emmeline's hand flew to her mouth. For one terrible moment, Lydia couldn't read her sister's expression. Then Emmeline laughed, bright and genuine, the first real laughter Lydia had heard from her in months. Finally, Emmeline said, I was beginning to think you'd both die of propriety before admitting it. Lydia stared at her. You're not angry? Angry? Lydia, I've been terrified you'd sacrifice yourself to make sure I married him even though you're clearly the one he talks to like an actual person. Emmeline descended the stairs quickly. Please say yes so I can find someone who actually wants me instead of the idea of me. Emmy, say yes, her sister repeated firmly. For once in your life, choose something for yourself instead of choosing what you think everyone else needs. Lydia looked between them. Her sister, hopeful and free for the first time in months, and the Duke, patient and certain and completely undone from riding through a storm to reach her. And she realized that maybe, just maybe, the most responsible choice wasn't always the one that required the most sacrifice. Yes, she whispered. Hartley's expression transformed into something so purely joyful it made her chest ache. Yes. Yes. Though you're absolutely mad, and society will be vicious, and he kissed her again, stopping the protests, and this time Lydia let herself believe it. Let herself want it. Let herself imagine a future built not on duty or survival, but on being seen completely and chosen anyway. 6 months later, long after the scandal had peaked and faded, after Emmeline had found a kind young artist who loved her wildness, after the Ashton estate had been quietly saved and restored, Lydia stood in the Duke's library and realized she'd finally stopped planning for disaster. You're smiling, Hartley observed, looking up from his correspondence. I'm allowed to smile. You are. It's just rare when you're not plotting something. She crossed to him, settling into the chair beside his. Maybe I've run out of things to plot. Doubtful. But he reached for her hand anyway, threading their fingers together with the easy intimacy of people who'd chosen each other despite every logical reason not to. Outside, rain began again, but inside the fire burned warm, and for the first time in years, Lydia Greaves allowed herself to simply be present. Not planning, not protecting, just alive and chosen and home.